Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here shortly after Shane Bieber's Toronto Blue Jays debut. Impressive 6-inning, 9-strikeout performance. Allows 1 run, 2 hits, 1 hit batter, and no walks. Just overall, everything the Blue Jays could have asked for on that trade deadline. And it sets it up really well for going forward here. I'm your host, Zach Worden, joined as always by Jori Negin-Shecter. And Jori, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is your Bieber fever?
It is a 14 out of 10. We are all the way in on Shane Bieber. Every bad thing I said about him at the trade deadline, where I was like, Cal Stevens a big price to pay. Well, now Cal Stevens on the injured list, and Shane Bieber is well on his way to the first ever Cy Young Award winner to pitch only August 22nd onwards.
Was it you that I was talking about this with, that I was like, what would it take for Blake Snell to win the Cy Young after he came back? But now it's Shane
Now it's
Bieber, and it's
Shane
like you have
Bieber.
to throw probably
Um,
4 perfect games. And
Probably something close to that. Well, I mean, listen, this wasn't a perfect game, but my goodness, he dices up the Marlins. And mind you, the Marlins have had this happen to them already this year with Brandon Woodruff, who you and I were speaking about briefly off air. But this was just an incredible first showing for Bieber. The command was incredible. The way he was working down and away, his breaking stuff looked incredible. Didn't allow a single hit on a curveball or a slider. Only 2 hits overall. This was, exactly what the doctor ordered. The 2 big missed pitches were fastballs where he didn't hit his spot and they hit it really hard. But basically, beyond those 2 hiccups, this was the most incredible outing Blue Jay has made in their debut since probably the David Price debut back in August of 2015. This is incredible stuff. A really amazing debut, really exciting, and gets you dreaming, a little tantalizing. And we're gonna maybe get his home debut middle of next week, hopefully.
I mean, obviously, it's going to be recency bias. I mean, already, you hear people talking game 1 of the playoffs, game 2 of the playoffs, right? But I mean, that's, we were saying that, or right after the trade happened, right? Like that's what they made the trade for. It was a ceiling swing by them at the trade deadline. When you think back to that time, you think, oh, it's a high price to pay, but at the end of the day, like this is kind of what you're looking for, right? And obviously, we knew the command was good. He'd obviously looked very sharp in AAA, and I think it's a really aesthetically pleasing pitcher, which always helps, right? Like the mechanics are so consistent. He just glides down the mound, like dare I say, it's Jacob deGrom-esque out there, except for obviously he's not throwing 100, he's throwing 93. However, it is the hardest that he has thrown since his Cy Young winning 2020 season. So, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, the arsenal was just ridiculous tonight, right? Like he was mixing all 5 of those pitches in. He goes 87 pitches over the 6 innings, 26 fastballs, 25 sliders, 13 knuckle curves, 12 cutters, 11 changeups. The changeup, by the way, like
That's a new pitch
that's
apparently.
whew, that's an enticing because that thing was velo was up on it, the vertical drop was up on it as well, and like a couple of those swings and misses that he got with it, you're kind of dreaming on that as being like a
He was
really
making some guys look
effective pitch.
really silly
Yeah,
on a couple of, I mean, 15 whiffs.
he
That's
got
the
one with each pitch, which is like
I
that's
mean, you
that's
can hear
big.
us going back and forth. We're getting excited. This is like a real special debut by the Blue Jays, or for the Blue Jays by Shane Bieber here. I mean, you kind of don't even have the superlatives to describe if this is what Shane Bieber is, what that could mean for this rotation. Like the floor on this rotation was good
The
enough
ceiling, the
to
floor was the
compete.
ceiling, but now the ceiling is.
The ceiling is the ceiling. Just amazing. Well, let me ask you. So you went back and you watched back, batter by batter. You kind of gave it a bit of a deeper analysis afterwards. And was there anything for you that really like stood out in a significant way that really excited you?
Well,
Was it the
the
changeup?
changeup was really exciting to me. I thought, for him, it was 4 whiffs with it. He got a couple Ks there, and he only threw it 11 times, right? Like he got 4 whiffs on 6 swings. So if you're like you want to use a whiff percentage, like it's a 67% whiff percentage. But I mean, it's not a unique take, but I just think like the command, right? And we talk a lot about control, and that's throwing strikes. However, when you're talking about Shane Bieber, you're talking about command, which is locating pitches on either side of the plate. And one thing that I did after the start was isolated his right-handed batter versus his left-handed batter pitch charts from the game. And of course, with the right-handed, it's everything is along the right side of the strike zone. Like nothing, there really isn't a ton leaking back over into righties, and on lefties, it's the same thing. Maybe a little bit more leaking back in there, but it's to be expected as a right-handed pitcher. So I think the command was just so impressive. I think like kind of when you watch back, and it's just like the Sportsnet strike zone, which we've talked about a little bit being not all that great, but one spot where it is pretty accurate is along the edges because you're just lining it up with the plate, so it's easy to do. But like just the amount where it's like boom on the line, on the line, on the line, on the line, like fastball, changeup, slider, like it was just like precise. And for this dude to be doing that like 507 days, I think it was from his last major league start, I think you got to be happy with that. You can't. There's no complaints. Even though the one home run that he gives up, right? 10 pitch at bat, like hell of an at bat from Sonoja, I believe it's pronounced. Sorry if I got that wrong. But I think when you just look at the totality of the outing, how consistent he was, and just the pure stuff, like you have to be excited about it. And there are of course always going to be qualifiers, right? Like you're not going to be facing the Marlins every time. I think it was 7 rookies for them in the lineup tonight, and maybe not some of the best hitters, but I think you take this start and you drop it in against playoff caliber lineup, like you're looking at some pretty good results there as well.
I mean, I think Joe Siddall said it best on the broadcast. It
Yeah,
was a pitch right on the black. Couldn't have put it in a better spot. And he used the quote, that is artistry.
yeah,
And it was him living in the shadow of the zone in basically areas that guys couldn't get their barrel to it. And he missed on maybe one or two pitches, and those pitches did get crushed. That is something that he's very clearly going to have to be careful of to not give in. Mind you, one of them was on a 10 pitch at bat,
yeah.
so he had really exhausted all of his options. But, to that point, if he can live on those edges, which is what he does so very well, he is a control pitcher before he is a flamethrower, then you're going to get exactly what you need from him. 9 strikeouts, just that I kind of can't get over. That's incredible. That's like, I think, well, like I think the Vegas line was I think 5.5 or something, right? And you look through basically anybody's, Twitter mentions before the game, nobody had him getting anywhere near the double digit mark, and he probably could have gone another inning if they really wanted him to. Game was out of hand at that point. There would have been no reason to push him to the 100 pitches, but he could have gone out for the seventh inning, and he could have racked up 10 or even 11 strikeouts. Just I'm at a loss for words. I'm so excited by this.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's kind of interesting to me, obviously, like very good pitcher, good track record. The Cy Young in 2020, like I don't want to completely discredit it because like he did that. He had a very good season. But of course that was in the COVID shortened campaign where you were only playing in division, so he had the advantage of only playing AL Central teams. And as we know, the AL Central is not the most competitive division. So like that
Neither is the
year,
NL Central, and I mean that was the rest of
who
the group.
who
Like,
won the Cy Young in 2020 in the National League?
help me out here.
Redacted in the NL Central. He's pitching in Japan right now. Has a pretty high ERA.
Oh, there
Um,
you go. There you
he
go.
did that while pitching with the Reds in the NL Central. So I mean, those guys probably had a little bit of an advantage. But however, so that season he had a 41% strikeout rate, which is bananas, right? And of course, as we saw, as baseball kind of returned and the world returned to normality, that strikeout rate, we did see it drop from 2021. It goes down to 33%, which is still incredible. And then 2022, 25%, which, still is solid and maybe a little bit more in line with, I would say, like what we were expecting from him now. And then in 2023, where he throws 120 innings, it's down to 20%. But one thing that he did do in 2024, he had like kind of this renaissance to start 2024 in his first two starts, where he struck out 44% of hitters before he ultimately did tear his UCL and have to go on the IL. And I believe there was an off-season training stint at Driveline. And one thing that I'm curious about to see is like if those strikeouts do take up, and I know that they didn't quite in the minor leagues during his rehab stint, but I'm interested to see if we're looking at a guy who is, I don't think he's ever going to be a 40% strikeout guy again. Like there's just nobody that really does that. But if we're looking more at like a 25% guy or like a pushing 30 type guy, because if you're, that's the type of ceiling that we're talking about, right? And like
And
if
don't
he's that
forget that
guy,
he combines that with a minuscule walk rate, and
yeah.
all of a sudden you look at the ratios and it starts to become a bona fide ace. You talk about the upside play, there's your upside.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because like obviously he like has such a high floor himself, but also like the ceiling on him is something that the Blue Jays just haven't had
Lacked
this
because he didn't
season.
have
Yeah.
it.
So I guess kind of, as you're watching this outing, obviously he comes out, strikes out the first two hitters. What is like kind of your progression as you're watching that? Like what is your reaction throughout his
So
start here?
here's how I would describe it, because obviously I was at the newsroom, or in the newsroom, in the control room, watching the game. And so he strikes out the first guy, and obviously it's like, oh, here you go, welcome back. And strikes out the next guy, and you're kind of like, oh, he's got something here. And then the second inning comes, and he has his moments. He's okay, whatever. And then eventually in the fourth inning, he strikes out the side, and he's at six strikeouts through 4 innings. And I said to myself out loud, like to the rest of the room, oh, he might actually be that guy. This might actually be Shane Bieber becoming the Blue Jays ace. And then on top of that, in the next 2 innings, he racks up an additional 3 strikeouts. This it was surreal to watch, is the only way I can put it. It was the most unfathomable, because the Jays have had, you know, ace level pitching in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
You go back to Alek Manoah,
I
you
think
go
they
back
had
to
Cy Young finalists in like four
three
straight
straight
years
years
or
or
something.
something.
Yeah.
It was Ryu, I
Robbie
think, and then
Ryu, Robbie
Robbie
Ray,
Ray, Manoah, Gosman, right? But then last year, obviously, it goes sideways, and it's like a bit of a lull. Even the year before that, it's a bit of a lull. And Shane Bieber, just just the confidence that you feel when he's on the bump. There's no one else in the Jays rotation that provides that kind of confidence.
so you asked me, like what was kind of the thing that stood out most to me, and obviously, we kind of talked through that, but for you, like what was the most impressive part of his start?
The command was just phenomenal. The way that he was dotting stuff, especially down and away to righties. Uh, I mean, you could see, like, I mentioned the at bat where Joe Siddle goes, that's a work of art. But the whole time he's dotting it here, he's dotting it there, and the stuff diving down and guys swinging over it. The 15 whiffs, I think, is super exciting too. I tweeted out the stat, the combination of the strikeouts and the whiffs. I think it's 6 starts this year that a Blue Jay has done that. Kevin Gausman is the only guy that's done it multiple times. Six, obviously, including Bieber's latest start. Uh, like, this is his first start as a Blue Jay. If he's going to be putting up whiff numbers like this, never mind the strikeout stuff, although it'd be nice if he maintained that as well. This is going to be your number one dude through and through, unquestionably.
Yeah, 100%. So before we kind of get into like bigger picture things, because we do want to get out of here fairly quickly, just a quick reaction from us here tonight. But we can talk of like maybe some of the drawbacks from the start. There weren't very many. We talked about, leaving a couple pitches over the heart of the plate that got hit. One over the fence, one close to over the fence. Any concern from you about kind of the way that he ended the outing, right? Like the sixth inning, he throws, I believe he only threw one fastball in the inning. And I'll pull it up here, but Chris Black tweeted this out. So here I have it. So his first pitch of the sixth inning was a 91.6 mile per hour fastball, his slowest fastball of the evening, and then he proceeded to throw 12 more pitches in the inning, all of which were non-fastballs. Any concern level there from you, or is this just him coming back from Tommy John game one, like tank may be a little bit empty at that point?
Yeah, I suspect there's a little bit of truth to both of those. I think if the velo had dipped a little bit more than that, because most of the evening he was around 92-ish. We lost a tick, but I think he gets up to that 80, 75 pitch mark, whatever. You start to see the stamina start to wane, and at that point, maybe it is for the best to get him out of there. Even I was saying, he could have gone to seven. He had probably had the 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 pitch count or whatever left. But again, the Jays were in such an advantage in terms of a position with their lead. There was really no need to push him. So to me, there's almost kind of that same attitude with him, right? You could ask him to dial up the fastball. You could put down the number one again and kind of be like, let's give her. But, at the end of the day, the fastball was good, not incredible. It certainly wasn't his best pitch of the night per se. Um, I'm okay with him going away from it. And I am okay with them recognizing that the fastball maybe doesn't have as much life as the evening progresses. But with that said, it is his first start coming back from, rehab assignment. He's going to need some time to get himself fully back to 100%. Before the broadcast, Marlins manager had spoken with, I want to say it was Hazel May, and mentioned that the last thing to come back for these guys coming back from Tommy John is often their command. And you look at, Sandy had that, and there were others on the Marlins that have also had that. For Bieber, he lives and dies by his command, right? So it's kind of wonder if you can maybe draw some conclusions where instead of it being a command situation for him, it's more of kind of a gas in the tank situation.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. I think they made the call to pull him at the right time. I think, you look at that, obviously went away from his fastball when you throw your slowest one of the night and you get out of the inning. And I think, what, they made a really nice call to finish it there. I think, if we're sitting here talking, he went 6 2/3 and gave up 4 hits and 2 runs, it just kind of doesn't have like the same je ne
The
sais
same
quoi
pizzazz.
of the 6 innings, 2 hits, 1 run, 9 Ks. Yeah, I mean, next time out, lining up for Wednesday against the Twins, but could definitely see a world where they push it to Friday against the
I
Brewers, given
I
how he
think
looked.
that's probably the kid going to be the case because you just want to give him the additional rest, and B, I think that that's a series that you're far more considerate of. You're way more concerned about that series against the Brewers, not necessarily because the Twins are no good or because the Brewers are of any particular consequence to you. They're still in the NL. But to me, if you want a series as a measuring stick, you want your best options out there to do the measuring.
That's gonna be a pretty cool series against Brewers. Like just for, weekend series at the Dome. Maybe you get Shane Bieber's home debut. Will be certainly, fun to watch, especially the way the Brewers have been playing. Um, yeah, and I think, it totally makes sense. We'll see how Bieber kind of responds in the next couple days and how he feels and everything, but I would imagine that he is kind of locked in and ready to go here for the rest of the stretch run.
Yeah, low level of concern, if any, really, at that stuff at the end because of the way that the stuff
Yeah.
as he started his outing was just so tantalizing.
Yeah, it's I mean, yeah, like I said, I don't think you could have really drawn up a better debut for him, and it's certainly, I'm sure, gonna, maybe kind of adjust the way that you're kind of looking at the rest of this Blue Jay season, because it's funny, like, I mean, I think when you look at them in October, um the thoughts of like a potential playoff team or whatever, obviously we're still like a month away from that, but I think having him, Scherzer, and Gosman in a perfect world lined up and pitching well for to kind of be your like three horses in a playoff series. Like that's
Pretty
kind of
nice.
like fills in the last little question mark that maybe you had about this Blue Jays team.
I mean, unless you want to count the bullpen and any sputtering there, but bullpens are bullpens, and I don't even know if that's worth getting
I
into
think you
because
just bet on this stuff. I mean, like obviously that's not like what we're here to talk about today, but I think the Blue Jays did have done a good job of like adding enough stuff back there. And maybe you even add like a Trey Savage or whatever to it, right? And then you kind of bump up your stuff in your bullpen, and
30%,
then
30%, 30 go keeps going up.
yeah, like his obviously he started, he looked pretty good. Was that yesterday or was that Wednesday? It was
I think it was
yesterday. It was
yesterday.
Thursday. I know I originally went with the 49.5. Cooler heads have prevailed, and my 20%, I even consider that a little aggressive at this point. But
All right, all right.
all
Well,
right.
you're not going to need him after Shane Bieber goes 9 innings every time out
Yeah,
there.
geez. Well, I'll tell you one thing that they have done really well is they've set themselves up in a really good spot to have these guys. Like if Bieber gives you 5 innings in the playoffs, and then you can just turn the ball over to, I know Yariel gave up the homer tonight, but even if you want to say little Varland, Dominguez, Hoffman, like
Good night. See ya later.
yeah, it's things are shaping up pretty well. Exciting day for sure. I think one of the most consequential days of the Blue Jays season, and especially coming off that series in Pittsburgh. Nice to see them get back in the win column. You got any final thoughts on Shane Bieber and what this means for the Blue Jays down the stretch, and what you're most excited for
Sure, I'll give
going
you what I'll
forward?
actually do is I'll one up you here. You said one of the
All
most
right.
consequential days of the season. I'll one up you right here. One of the most consequential days of the decade.
Wow. Since 2015, I mean, there have been a number of playoff games in the last decade. So,
And yet,
I don't know, a Friday night against the Marlins is
you know
cracking.
what? You know
Give me
what?
off the cuff, like top 10, top 15, top
For sure,
5.
top 10. It's right up there
All
with the
right.
David Price stuff. It's a top 10 consequential day. Even if you don't want to say the last 10 years, you want to shrink that down to 20 since 2020 and project out into 2030 as things stand right now, a top 10 day of the 2020s for the Toronto Blue Jays.
I don't have anything to add to that. I don't think there's anything else that I can say that will top that. So that's going to do it for us here today at the Bird's Eye View podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure to hit subscribe and like buttons if you're watching on YouTube. You can find us there at the Bird's Eye View podcast. If you're listening along on the podcast provider of your choice, make sure to drop a follow and review. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at Worden_Zach, one away from 800, by the way. Jori is at Jori Negin-Shecter, and the pod is at BEV_pod. Thanks so much for listening, and enjoy the rest of the weekend.